Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 24 of Life Lessons and Combat Sports. I'm your host, Eric Hamidi, the podcast where we tell stories of those within the realm of combat sports, and I relay an important life lesson for y'all. So, an interesting thing about this episode, or at least the build up to this episode, is that I went into episode 24 thinking that I was just going to talk about a certain subject matter, and I had been doing my research about it and such. But then what happened earlier this week was that earlier in the week that I'm recording this, I had a change in plans. I was sort of thinking about how I wanted to go about my episodes or what I wanted to talk about, and then also thinking about how it fell in line with certain anniversaries that are coming up, that I decided to change course. So what I mean by that is that originally for episode 24, I was going to talk about World Championship Wrestling, WCW, and the beginning of their program, Monday Nitro. I was going to talk about the company history and the things that led to that. But then as I was doing that, I'm not entirely sure how much of their history I can go into in that episode. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it all in one, or if I'm going to have to or want to split it up into two. I didn't quite know what was going to become of that. So with that, and also due to the fact that the subject matter that I'm going to talk about in this episode is definitely something that I wanted to talk about, I didn't want to jump around too much as far as, in episode 24, I talk about WCW Monday Nitro, and then I talk about this subject matter, then I go back to WCW. I want to keep everything linear as much as possible. So that's why I'm choosing to do this episode that I'm about to talk about. And I knew for a fact that I wanted to talk about the subject matter that I'm going to talk about right here, because the individual who I'm going to talk about is Kevin Randleman, and also this month is the 10-year anniversary of Kevin Randleman's unfortunate passing. So I definitely wanted to do an episode about him, and given the fact that this is kind of like a milestone as far as how many years it's been, I wanted to do something special. I mean, I was going to do an episode to pay tribute to Kevin Randleman in some way, shape, or form. That's something that I definitely wanted to do before the month was out, but I think given the fact that this is a 10-year anniversary, I might do something where I kind of combine multiple life lessons with the individual as opposed to trying to stick to just one. I mean, to be honest, I kind of feel as though this is significant enough of a, I guess, milestone to warrant that. I mean, I don't know, maybe some of this kind of goes back to something that I heard Bob Arum, promoter of Top Rank Boxing, said one time, where it almost seems like any type of anniversary or birthday that ends in a 5 or 0 is made into a bigger deal. So maybe that's playing a role a little bit in this, but regardless, this is kind of my way of paying homage and paying tribute to an individual who I've grown to really admire in the combat sports realm, but unfortunately has fallen into the category of somebody who, unfortunately, I'm never going to have a chance to meet or get to talk to or what have you. So those are some of the things that is kind of motivating me to talk about this person and this individual. And then also what I will say is that I feel like the thing I'm going to talk about with regards to Kevin Randleman, or what Kevin Randleman can teach us about life, that stuff is, to be honest, something that's been on my mind the last couple of weeks. I mean, some of the things that I'm going to touch on, to be honest, is stuff that's either grown in significance for me, or I've become more aware of it, or it has become a lot more important to me. Like, just generally speaking, seeing what I've seen from others around me, or just kind of like what I'm going through or what I've been through in my own life, it's kind of made me be more aware of it and conscious of it, and more empathetic, or just you think about these things a little bit more. So that's why I want to talk about it. It's also something that, to be honest, I kind of feel as though throughout 2026, it may be stuff that I think about, or that I continue to think about, or that, these types of things come back to me throughout the year. Or honestly, if nothing else, I feel as though these are going to be things that I cover in other episodes throughout the year, because I can sort of see some similarities between like one of the things that Kevin Randleman went through, and then how things played out at the end of WCW's life. So things like that, I mean, I think is just like the fact that they'll come up in subject matters, or come up in my own personal life as I go about my days throughout the rest of the year. That's kind of why I want to have a creative outlet to talk about these things. And to be honest, that's the whole point of life lessons in combat sports, is that just everything that I have here as far as this setup, or just what I want to talk about, the research, the lights that you guys can't see behind the camera, just like all this stuff, it all complements, or adds into the fact that this is a creative outlet for me to process or deal with stuff. So I kind of felt as though that's also a way for me to kind of deal with, or understand, or just cope with the different things that are going on in my life. I mean, I'm sure I've used that analogy before, but that's kind of how I'm thinking about this episode, or what motivated me to do the things that I want to do. But I think, you know what? One last thing is that I did some research, or I rewatched my episode on Kevin Randleman that I did last year as a way to kind of prep for this. And how I'm going about it is that I'm gonna try to not be too repetitive as far as covering things that I already talked about in that episode, but just due to the nature of it, there's gonna be some overlap, just given the kinds of things that I talk about. So just want to set that. And finally, with all of that out of the way, let's get right into the episode. So, like I said, Kevin Randleman. He is a former mixed martial artist who was a two-time NCAA Division I wrestler, who ended up making his MMA debut in 1996, funny enough, on my 5th birthday. So that's an interesting little fun fact for y'all watching. So yeah, he debuts in 1996. A couple years later, debuts in the UFC, and he actually became their UFC heavyweight champion. He defended the title one time. Afterwards, he had a few more fights in the UFC before moving on to Pride Fighting Championship over in Japan, where he had a few more fights there, but also created memorable moments that I'm about to get to in a moment, that, those really stand out in fans' minds. So, fights in Pride Fighting Championship, once that ended, he fought a few more times for other organizations. He fought sometimes in Japan, but most notably, he competed in Strikeforce, which was at the time the number 2 mixed martial arts promotion in the United States, behind the UFC, in the late 2000s, early 2010s. And then he retired in 2011. And then, kind of like what I was alluding to just a moment ago, is the fact that he passed away in February of 2016 due to complications from pneumonia. A few years after that, he is inducted into the UFC Hall of Fame class of 2020. That's a very brief rundown of Kevin Randleman's career. And I'll add to that he retired with a he retired with a record of 17 wins, 16 losses. And perhaps maybe you're thinking, if somebody has that kind of 500 record, then how is it that it warrants them to be in the UFC Hall of Fame? So to that, I will say that yes, Kevin didn't have, I mean, he basically had a 500 record. But to me, there are a couple things that contribute to his status as far as being a Hall of Fame class member is the fact that he did have some notable achievements. He did achieve winning a championship, being a former UFC heavyweight champion. And then also, he's responsible for creating some very memorable moments in mixed martial arts that I said it once before. I feel like I'm going to repeat myself. That just stand in fans' memory forever. And one of those moments, yes, it's something that I talked about in my episode last year, but I think it's worth noting in this episode and then adding a little bit of a twist to it, or just adding more info to it that I didn't quite mention last year. So one of the things that Kevin Randleman will be remembered for was his bout, his first fight with Mirko Cro Cop. Now, Mirko Cro Cop was a kickboxer who transitioned into MMA. He had a respectable kickboxing career and was pretty much running roughshod in MMA. He had only lost one time, and he just created this reputation of being this fierce individual, and he became famous for his left high kick. That was his secret weapon. So he had a certain reputation behind him, but he also had the skills to go along with that. So something that Pride Fighting Championship used to do back in the day was that they would have these Grand Prix, these tournaments. And in 2004, they had the heavyweight Grand Prix tournament. These Grand Prix back in the day, they were 8 or 16-man tournaments that would play out over a span of a few months to crown a Grand Prix champion. So in the first round, Kevin Randleman is up against Mirko Cro Cop. Now, everyone is going into this fight thinking that Mirko's gonna win. He was a heavy favorite, given the point that Kevin Randleman was in at that point, coming off of 2 losses and the kind of reputation and the aura that Mirko had. Kevin was a heavy underdog. However, what ended up happening was, at one point in that fight, they're near the center of the ring. Kevin throws a punch. It lands on Mirko, and Mirko goes down. Kevin follows him there. It continues for a little bit longer after that, but then Kevin unloads a barrage of punches and actually knocked out Mirko Cro Cop. That is a huge moment, but honestly, it's the things that follow that make it such an iconic moment. And I like the use of that word there, iconic, because Kevin knocks out Mirko, and then you have you have the celebration that Kevin is having in the ring with his team, the antics he's doing. And then something that I want to give a really big shout out to is Mauro Ranallo, who was on commentary for that fight. He was just so awed and so amazed by it. He's on commentary and he's just shouting, "Kevin Randleman has knocked out Mirko Cro Cop." And then you had this music that was playing throughout the arena that Pride would play back in the day when the fight was over. And it was just this epic, triumphant music that just, was so invigorating. And then you combine that with how Kevin is celebrating, the joy that he has and all that stuff. I mean, I dare anybody to look at that and tell me they don't feel something when they watch that, because to be honest, hearing that, like recollecting this story, I mean, it's bringing the passion out of me, or just creating that awe factor in me, to be perfectly honest. And just, it's just because it's such an amazing moment. I mean, when, the music that was playing at that moment, it's almost like something you would hear in a movie, honestly. That, like, okay, where the hero wins the big fight at the end of the movie. It's almost like that's what it was. So all of those things, on top of just the simple fact that Kevin defeated Mirko Cro Cop, all of that stuff adds to that moment to make it so iconic and memorable, and just something that lasts in the memories of fans for all time. And I will say, Mauro Ranallo, he helps make that moment. I mean, that's one of the I've heard other analysts say this, that that's one of the all-time calls in mixed martial arts, is Mauro Ranallo saying Kevin Randleman has knocked out Mirko Cro Cop. So, Jesus, man. I mean, that's one of the things that Kevin's going to be remembered for. And then there's also another iconic moment that Kevin will be known for that leads into the next fight that he had. So, like I said, he defeats Mirko Cro Cop, moves on to the next round. It takes place 2 months later, where Kevin Randleman has to now face the great Fedor Emelianenko. Now, if anyone's watching this who doesn't know who Fedor Emelianenko was, he was a former mixed martial artist. He specialized in Sambo and Judo, and between 2001 and 2010, he was undefeated. This was Fedor Emelianenko at his absolute peak, prime Fedor. I mean, just this unstoppable force that could adapt to any situation and win any fight in any manner. This was the type of individual that he was. I mean, Fedor Emelianenko is considered one of, if not the greatest mixed martial artist back then and even today. That was the challenge that Kevin had going up against Fedor. It's kind of funny because I worked with somebody for a while where we were joking around that if Prime Fedor was in a gulag, he would be running that shit. It's always been like a fun memory that I have with him. So that was the type of challenge that Kevin had. And yes, what ended up happening, I mean, given how much I have propped up Fedor, as you can imagine, Fedor ended up winning that fight. Now, the way I kind of see that is that Fedor's victory is a story, or is a component of that fight, and it just adds into the legacy of Fedor Emelianenko, or just, yes, it's another win under his, it's another win for his career, and it just sort of demonstrates the run he was on, or what he was very good at, and all that stuff. But what is just as talked about, if not more, is the fact that, or is what Kevin did in that fight. So, the fight starts, and then there's a little bit of grappling going on, but then what Kevin Randleman does next is he lifts Fedor off the ground and then slams him down onto the mat directly on his head, creating a thunderous sound that just echoed throughout the arena. I mean, like, you listen to that and it's thunderous. There's no other way for me to describe it. And it wowed the crowd that was in there. It amazed the commentators. It's just the sound and like what he did and everything, and then the stuff that followed afterwards that I'm about to get into, make that one of, if not the greatest slams in the history of mixed martial arts. And the only reason I'm saying one of is because at that same event was the contender, or the number one, depending on how you want to look at it. Because earlier in the night, there was a fight between Quentin Rampage Jackson and Ricardo Arona. And the way that Quentin won that fight was that he basically he powerbombed Ricardo Arona to knock him out. And it's one of the standout knockout slams in mixed martial arts. I mean, first of all, I'll just say, I guess that proves that a power bomb can work in MMA. You know, if we want to borrow from professional wrestling there, that's one of the few moves that could actually work. But then also, you know, really, if you want to see what that was like for yourself, just go on YouTube and type in Quentin Rampage Slam, and you'll find that. I mean, the fact that those two slams happened on the same night is just amazing. So it's almost like that moment is almost like that's the story of the fight, or just that's the thing that people talk about, as opposed to, you know, Fedor Emelianenko's victory or his performance. But, you know, that shouldn't take away from that, because remarkably, even though Kevin slammed Fedor right on his head, I mean, first of all, I don't know how his neck didn't just snap. I mean, it was a powerful slam. That's another one that you can look up on YouTube. Just type in Kevin Randleman slam and that'll come up. But amazingly, what Fedor is able to do is he's able to maintain his composure, stay in the fight, reverse the position, and then win by submission. Amazing. I don't know how he did it, but he did. That's one of the other things that Kevin is gonna, you know, be most remembered for. And I guess the shift in tone right now is just because, like, I'm thinking about some of the circumstances that led up to that Fedor Emelianenko fight that Kevin Randleman had to deal with, which, you know, also ties in with the life lesson that I am now going to share with y'all for the episode is, you know, first of all, I should just set the stage a little bit here as far as leading up to that Fedor Emelianenko fight. Kevin Randleman's father actually passed away. And then the day that he was supposed to fight Fedor was actually, in fact, on Father's Day in 2004. So, as you can imagine, that was a very difficult thing, or that would be a very difficult thing for anyone to deal with. I guess the anecdote that, or I don't know if anecdote's the right word, but I guess the thing I'll add to that is just that, yes, that's a very difficult thing. And given my experience, either what I've seen from others who I care about, or just even with myself, to try to push through to get the things done that we need to, or just to, you know, try to not distract ourselves by problems in order to go about our lives. Or, you know, if you have a presentation to make and you have some like personal problems, like, okay, trying to like forget about those and focus on the presentation you need to do. I mean, that's like an example of how it can play out. I mean, like, I've just sort of seen how difficult it could be to do that at times. And I've become a lot more empathetic about that in my life. Or just, I think what's more important to say is like understanding that a lot more, or a lot better than I would have, or I may have when I was younger. You know, it's just, it's a hard thing to do. Now, when you're trying to do that after somebody you love passes away, I mean, I can't imagine how difficult that must have been. to be honest, I don't think we can truly comprehend what that's like unless we ourselves go through that. But I think we can all kind of at least comprehend a little bit what that would be like to experience that and go through that. And, you know, situations like that, kind of what I've been saying is that it reminds me of my own experiences, either what I went through myself or just what others. And I don't know, it just, I guess when I kind of think about it, in addition to something I'm going to point out in just a moment as far as Kevin's mindset, I don't know, it affects me. But, despite Kevin going through that, he didn't pull out of the fight. He just went ahead with it as scheduled, which, first of all, is very commendable, and it's admirable that he would do that. I mean, this isn't the only instance of an MMA fighter continuing on with a fight, even though somebody close to them passed away, but it doesn't take away from the fact that it takes a lot of strength to do that. So I think that should be noted and, commended for. And I guess I sort of kind of what I was just talking about is that, those kinds of aspects really affect me. I guess it's just because, like, how do you focus for something like that? I mean, obviously, the harder the thing you're going through, I mean, the more difficult it's going to be to try to, like, concentrate on what it is that you need to do. So it's like, how do you even, I don't know, how do you do that? And this was something that happened during, or not during, but like during the event before the fight, because one of the commentators for Pride Fighting Championship at the time was Bas Rutten, who he himself was a former mixed martial artist. He was a former heavyweight champion, former opponent of Kevin Randleman, and then later on actually a friend of Kevin Randleman's. So he's interviewing him and he's, giving his condolences to Kevin and all that stuff. And, even he's talking about like that aspect of like, how do you even train? Like, how do you even like push through or just, ignore? I don't remember exactly what he said, but these are the things he's kind of getting at, is that like, how do you even train when you're, dealing with stuff like this? Now, that idea of like coming back to some of these subject matters, I mean, to be honest, that whole idea of like, trying to compartmentalize and set something aside for the time being can relate to some of the WCW episodes that I'm going to do. And it's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of always made me wonder, like, if I brought this up in like an MMA podcast that I did several years ago, is that I've always kind of wondered like how that affected his mindset. Because sometimes I've thought of, and ever since I found out about this, I, thought about it as far as if Kevin hadn't been dealing with a personal loss at that time, like had his father not passed away, would he have been able to like fight better or compete better, or just, was that kind of like a distraction for him, so maybe he wasn't performing at his best? Like, I just kind of wonder if that could have played a factor, because there's like a moment, and maybe one day I'll get to talk to or ask somebody who knew him who could like provide insight into this. But like in that Fedor Emelianenko fight, after he slammed Fedor, there's like a moment where Boss Rutan is saying like, oh, he should knee to the head because in Pride you could knee a grounded opponent in the head. So like he's like Boss Rutan is saying, oh, he should do that. And it's like, did Kevin not do that just because of like the normal, like natural flow of how a fight can go and how you are in the moment? Or is it just, wasn't thinking clearly? I don't know. Maybe someday I can ask somebody about that. Somebody who knew him about that. Like, but then again, I mean, I don't really know. I mean, maybe like given who Fedor Emelianenko was at that time or how skilled he was, who knows if it would have even mattered or if it would have made a difference. Maybe it wouldn't. It's always kind of like a what if right there. But the one thing that I will add for certain is the fact that Kevin Randleman had a lot of sportsmanship. Anytime he lost a fight, he never made excuses for it. And I know that he would never, like, obviously I don't know him and I didn't know him personally, but given what I've learned about him or how I've heard others talk about him, my research, or like watching Kevin Randleman interviews, he was not the type of person to, be all like, oh, well, I lost this fight because my arm was, dislocated or whatever it may be. It's like, if he lost, he gave a fighter their due and all that stuff. So I know that he would not have used that as an excuse for his Fedor Emelianenko loss. And just, you know, yeah, he wasn't the type to do that, or he wouldn't have done that. And he wasn't going to for that Fedor fight. But I don't know. I kind of wonder. And I can only say that just given the fact that, like, times where I've experienced hardship, it was difficult for me to, you know, focus on it. So those are just some thoughts I, had about, that whole situation. But it's what Kevin Randleman said. It's what Kevin Randleman said in that backstage interview with Boss Rutan that is the core of the life lesson. And it's kind of like two concepts or two statements, but I don't know, in a weird way, given what I'm talking about or just the way my mind works, I feel as though they're related. I feel like they're connected. Or just it could be that because this is the 10-year anniversary of Kevin Randleman's passing, I feel as though that warrants maybe giving more than one life lesson. This was something that I said in my Kevin Randleman episode last year, but the difference between that and here is the fact that this is the focus for today's episode, and I can expand my thoughts on it, for you to help you out in your life. So, in that interview, which, as a little bit of a fun fact, they use that audio at the end of Kevin Randleman's Hall of Fame induction video that the UFC made when they first announced it. He says, "You can never forget those that we've lost. Just remember them and cherish the times that we had. So long as everyone keeps their chin up, nothing can hurt us, and everyone on this planet is unbreakable so long as you keep it here and here. God bless you all." I did mention how those are very nice words. On one aspect of that, when Kevin Randleman is saying everyone is unbreakable, to me, those are very powerful words, or that just really stands out to me, because To me, it's kind of like showing or is a message to people that we are strong individuals and we can get through whatever kind of difficult time or hardship we're going through if we have our mind and our heart right. Now, I'm going to go a little off tangent here because I really don't want to forget this. Like, the one thing that I'll say about like the heart aspect, I think with the heart, an aspect of that, at least in my opinion, or how it's played out for me, is like the drive and passion to try to like go for the things you want or try to make your, your life better. I think that's like where that is one way that the heart plays a factor in this, is that, just having that determination and that focus and that continued effort to try to get yourself to a better place. Like, that's one way that the heart helps make people, according to Kevin Randleman, unbreakable. So definitely, I just wanted to say that real quick before, in case I forgot about it. But back to, talking about the mind, to me, I mean, like, here's the thing. Those words are, really powerful to me because I feel like it's really true as far as those two things, your mind and your heart, playing a factor in getting you through the hard time you're going through. And the reason why is because I sort of see it in a way that's like mentally, if you can keep your head right and your mind right, that will allow you to formulate plans or approaches to get from a bad time, or just to get from a bad time to a good time. Because to me, the mind is the intellectual. That's the one that can formulate and all that stuff and just can see, okay, what it is that you need to do to get from point A to point B. I don't know. I just find it interesting. It's kind of like, okay, the mind comes in like that, and then it's almost like the heart is the emotional part, or just, I kind of relate the heart to the first part of Kevin Randleman saying that, oh, cherish the times that we had, and in reference to like people passing away. Like, I mean, time is undefeated, and there's nothing that we can do to prevent people from passing away. But you want to make the time that you can to be around loved ones, so then you have those times that you can cherish. I mean, forgive me for kind of bouncing around between these two, but like I said, I do feel like they're related. Perhaps what I can do is just finish up on my, mind and heart part, and then I'll move on to that. So to me, with the heart, that is a way that plays out is you keep your heart open to let people in, or go back, or not go back, but fall back on your support system. If you're dealing with a difficult time, then perhaps, as an example, you think, okay, somebody in my life passed away. I need to talk to a friend or a family member, whatever it may be. So intellectually, you come up with that, and then your heart guides you to who's the right person for that, or just like you open up, once you figure out, okay, you need to, like, maybe this will play out in this way. You figure out you need to talk to somebody for support, and then your heart is open enough to either let those people in or seek them out yourself. I think it's important that when we go through such a difficult time, that we don't just close ourselves off to people. Thinking about this out loud, I'm kind of like thinking about how friends, and like my own friends, have told me stuff like that. And I think sometimes when we're dealing with like any type of hardship, it could be somebody passing away, it could be the loss of a job, it could be, whatever it is that you can imagine. Sometimes we close ourselves off, and we just live a secluded lifestyle. And perhaps keeping your composure with your mind and your heart, you can make sure that you don't lose out on those times with people, or just generally speaking. And this is kind of a big thing for me, to be honest. I've sort of like thought about in the past where, if somebody we know passes away and it's really difficult, it's kind of like that's the drawback to like making friends, I guess. And that's something I've kind of like wondered, or I've like raised this question before with people in my circle, is just like, it almost seems like, why, like, how, or like, why would we have that trade-off as far as like, oh, why would we make friends or something like that if it's just going to be very sad when they pass away? And it's just, I've been told that humans are just, generally speaking, humans are social creatures, and we probably wouldn't be able to get through the kinds of things that we go through in our lives if we didn't have friends or family members or different kinds of connections with individuals. So those are like the ways that those two things play a factor. And to me, how the whole having your heart open leads into the cherishing of the times that we had. It's just like, you know, you have to always remember people who are no longer with us. And while them passing away is very difficult, I think if we do what we can to spend time with them, then we can at least be at peace with the fact that we did that. Because, I mean, there are just some people in my life who are no longer around, who just, I kind of think about it that I wish I spent more time with them, but it just didn't play out that way. And I'm, honestly, even talking about this right now, I'm thinking about the aspect of like, okay, that's even something that I'm going to do shortly after I'm done recording this episode, is like, capitalizing or just practicing what I preach as far as, okay, spending time with like loved ones, because I don't want to, like, I want to do what I can so that I can be content with it as much as possible. And I think like if you keep your heart open, then you will actually have those times to cherish with people. You will have moments that you can say, oh yeah, I like, dealing with grief or loss. It's kind of like Kevin was saying, that you cherish the times you had, but like while you're alive, while they're alive, you need to make sure that you have those moments. And I think when we go through a difficult time, sometimes we can just close ourselves off, and that would take away from the times that we, the good times that we could have and cherish. So I think that's an important thing to try to like realize and not, make that mistake. Because, I don't know. I mean, you don't need a life lessons podcast to know that life is hard. We all go through challenging, difficult things throughout our lives. But the fact that Kevin was saying, yeah, everybody's unbreakable, on a personal level, I guess that kind of like stands out to me because just given some of the things I've been going through the last few years, as far as like it even started like 3 years ago, as far as like trying to figure out what kind of line of work or creative endeavor, artistic endeavor, whatever it is you want to call it, like that whole thing started like 3 years ago, and it caused a lot of stress as far as trying to figure out what do I want to do, or what kind of meaning do I want my life to have, or will it to a significant degree that I'm okay with or that I can be happy with. All that stuff just made things really challenging for quite a bit of time, but it's weird because it almost seems as if now I'm kind of like turning the corner. I mean, I mentioned this in my Eddie Guerrero episode that, it kind of seems like some things are getting better, or like, turning for the better for me. I mean, like I also said in my Eddie Guerrero episodes, I don't want to get ahead of myself and think like, oh, I'm out of the woods and all that stuff. But kind of like seeing, kind of like being at that point in my life, it's kind of like, yeah, that is true. Or just it adds a component of like peace to it, I guess. Like I guess it's like what I'm trying to say, I guess, is like going through the difficult thing that I was throughout that time, but now that I'm here, as far as like being in a little bit of a better place, it's like, yeah, that is true. We are in fact unbreakable. I'll just say this, that Kevin Randleman seemed like a fascinating person. And once again, from my research, he seemed like a really good guy. And I really wish I got a chance to, I really wish I got a chance to like meet him or talk to him or just have some type of interaction with him. But, it just didn't work out that way. You know, I think what I'll like, it's kind of like interesting because it's like in the moment when you're going through something difficult, that whole idea of like we're unbreakable, it's like that could help you get through it in the present. And then I guess like saying that we're unbreakable, it's kind of like when you look back on something, like almost like in hindsight, you kind of like makes you sort of think, okay, yeah, I was able to get through that. I am able to get through that. And if something were to happen, if another like tragedy or hardship or like whatever comes up, I can get through that as well. And, it's just kind of like, it's not to say that like whatever it is that you're going through is not difficult. It's gonna be hard. But it's kind of like something that I've heard, once again, within the combat sports realm, that I'll probably make an episode about one day, is the fact that like you just become better or stronger at dealing with said thing. And I don't know, maybe just keeping these ideas in mind, that will help you progress and get better with the current situation or the current like difficulty you're dealing with. And then, in the future, you can, you know, when you're dealing with something hard again, then you can cope with it better. You know, that's like one aspect of it that I definitely want to mention. I mean, like it may seem a little like, unrelated, or I don't have it really all like thought out, maybe as well as I did like a few days ago, but that's definitely something I at least wanted to introduce in this episode, as far as like, oh, with a hardship, you get stronger at it. Like, the example that plays out is like, okay, you when somebody passes away, you will be sadder about it like immediately after it happens, and some time may pass, and it's like it's not like you're it's not like you're not upset about said person's passing anymore, but you're just stronger in like dealing with it and not letting it wreck you. Like that's the point of what I'm trying to say here, or like that's kind of what I'm getting at. And I think all of that, I think I'm just saying that as like affirmation and to not like dismiss, like, okay, we're unbreakable, but that doesn't mean that whatever it is we're going through is not going to be challenging or hard. It is. But I think all these things play a role in helping you get through that. And, one day when I do an episode on that particular aspect of like, oh, you just get stronger with grief or like similar concepts, if nothing else, that'll be something that I can expand upon in a future episode. And maybe this is a little bit of a teaser about that. But these are the things that I really wanted to say about Kevin Randleman, and I really wanted to do something special to honor him because just professional stuff aside, he seemed like a really good person. And if you were a friend of his, if you were a family member, if you met him, knew him, whatever, sounds like it was a great opportunity. Rest in peace, Kevin Randleman. I hope that I was able to do his life or his stories justice with this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm curious if anyone watches this and has any Kevin Randleman stories, like they met him or they, had a conversation with him or whatever. Please, if you just have any favorite Kevin Randleman memories as a fan, like similarly to me where you never knew him, but there are moments that you really enjoyed from his career, share them in the comments section below. And in general, let me know what you thought about this episode. Please like, share, and subscribe to my videos. Follow me on social media. I'm on Instagram, Life and Combat Sports, and then I'm on Twitter at L Combat Sports. All right, everyone. I'll catch you all on the next one. See ya.